Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our second Dean's Huddle of this academic year. Thanks for joining us. Today I'm very, very excited to have a CEO and an alumni of the MBA program here to talk with us today. So tonight's topic is around the life of a CEO. We're going to learn a little bit about Ross and his background. His background is quite impressive. So I've gotten to know Ross over the last year and a half or so. We're actually live close together and do run together, which is kind of fun. He's a UMaine engineer. He's a UMaine MBA, as I mentioned, and has got an incredible career history that we're going to talk about. He's been away from Maine for a lot, just recently came back. He's CEO of this organization. He's led organizations in Japan and other parts of Asia, and most recently in California. So we're lucky to have him back in the state, that's for sure. And he's leading Yokogawa Fluid Imaging, which is a really interesting story, which he's going to tell, a life sciences organization right here in Scarborough in the greater Portland area. So welcome, Ross. Maybe tell us a little bit about the company, your background, anything I missed, and say hi to our MBA viewers.
Great. Well, thank you, Norm. It's an honor and a pleasure to have you and the University of Maine and the Graduate School of Business here at our facility. As Norm mentioned, I'm Ross Bryant, President and CEO of Yokogawa Fluid Imaging Technologies. We are a Maine company, celebrated our 22nd anniversary just this past year. Born out of Booth Bay, Maine, and a privately held company for many years, and just recently, in the last couple of years, was acquired by Yokogawa, a very large multinational Japanese firm. As Norm mentioned, I was in California prior to this, and have lived in Japan myself and have experience there, and excited to be back here in the state of Maine.
Wonderful. And Ross also speaks some Japanese and knows the culture well, hence the nice fit with this organization, I think. So let's kick it off with a question a bit about your role as a CEO. I think this is a goal for a lot of the people that are going to listen today. And tell us about what's a typical day in the life look like for Ross Brant, and maybe some of the challenges that you're facing.
Sure. Yeah, great, Norm. Certainly one of the difficulties in these times, right, is there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of turbulence, right? And that really drives what I'm doing now, and it's really around three areas: supply chain, labor, and most recently around currency fluctuation, right? And what that has meant ultimately is, my role has had to be less strategic and more tactical as we fight these challenges and fight these fires. So, take supply chain, for example. We, prior to these supply chain issues, had a number of wonderful lean initiatives around improving operational excellence and productivity. But all of that sort of has had to take a back seat as we deal with day-to-day challenges on supply chain, right? Either delays, product quality issues, supplier parts issues, quality there. And so we've just had to fight numerous fires. So just had to be very tactical because of these supply chain disruptions. And I guess in addition to that, even my engineering team, who you wouldn't think would necessarily need to be involved in operations, many of my engineering staff have had to put new product development initiatives on hold because we're trying to source other components and need to qualify those vendors, re-engineer some of our internal components of our products, and so on and so forth. And so again, needing to pivot and just fight the day-to-day, and so that's put some of our product development schedules on hold, or have pushed back the schedules. Labor's another big one. I mean, everybody talks about it, of course. For us, just trying to grow the business, and at the rate at which we're trying to grow, a lot of that is now limited by our ability to find talent, right? Not just here in the state of Maine, but globally as we continue to expand our business. And then lastly, as I mentioned, currency. So that's been a big one. Over half of our business is done outside the United States, and everyone has seen is what's happened with currency and exchange rate fluctuations, and so that's been a new fire that I'm currently battling.
All challenges, and it sounds like a daunting task. So give us an example, just as a follow-up of a typical day. I know there probably isn't one, but when a CEO, give everyone a bit of a flavor. So you arrive here, I'm sure very early in the morning, and you stay till late, and we're probably taking you away from your work right now. Are you connecting with Japan? How much time are you spending in the lab? You're also a scientist yourself. Like how much time is in meetings? Give us an idea of what does a CEO deal with? I'm sure it's like a fire hose, but what's a typical day if there is one?
Sure. So we operate off a strategic business plan, right? That drives our business not only for the 12-month period, but out to 3 years. And so that drives a lot of how I think about what my responsibilities are and how we operate. And innovation is key to what we do, what we have done, and what we hope to do in the future. So I'm constantly looking in with our new product development group to see what's happening on the innovation side, and are we keeping schedule with these new product initiatives. And then yes, I'm touching base with Japan almost on a daily basis with the parent organization to communicate with them, but then also our global offices. And so the European situation is obviously challenged, I think much more so than here in the US at the moment. So our European headquarters is based in Germany, and working with those folks to understand what their needs are and the turbulence that they're facing.
Wonderful, that's great. Well, back to the first question, you talked about some of the challenges. Let's flip it around and talk about some of the exciting things, the opportunities. Talk to us about what you're seeing kind of at the main level, national level, and a global level.
Sure. Well, I mean, certainly one of the things that's really exciting about our business is we do really important things, right? We're helping solve some of the world's biggest challenges with our technology, right? And so as you mentioned, we're really we're an instrumentation company, but we serve the life science market. And so when you think about that, it's biopharmaceutical development. So we played a role in COVID vaccine development, right? And the characterization of the COVID vaccine for those that manufactured that product. We are in the water quality monitoring business. And so I think everybody understands what it means to have not only clean drinking water, but also clean rivers, streams, lakes, and oceans. So that's really exciting, right? And highly motivating, not just for me, but for all of our staff, right? That there's a real purpose behind what we do. So that said, looking at what are some of the things sort of within Maine, nationally and internationally. I think on the Maine side, we have an opportunity to really continue to grow and expand our business. And as not only a UMaine alum in the engineering school and the business school, but also probably a fourth or fifth generation Mainer, right? I'm really committed to having us here and continuing to grow our business and scale our business here in the state of Maine. And so although we do a little business here in terms of commerce and selling our instruments, there's a real opportunity to partner with the state to help us continue to make this our home. It has been our home for 22 years and hope to make it our home for the next 20, but also for the state to help us with labor, right? Our needs are unique, right? Finding highly qualified scientists and engineers and business folks is not easy. So partnering with the state and institutions and programs like yourself to make sure that we have the labor available so that we can grow the business here in the state the way we want it. And then nationally and internationally, it's continued to expand on what we're doing. Over half our business is outside the U.S., and we continue to scale and grow that, and using the state of Maine, using Scarborough specifically as our headquarters for doing that.
That's exciting. Hey, I'm going to guess it's a question that a lot of people are having that I do. When you talked about the water quality monitoring, if I got that right, and that's very interesting and wonderful thing. Tell us about how technological has that become? Don't give us any trade secrets, but what are you doing there, and how are you working with organizations, I'm serving as governments and others to help make Tell us a bit about that, because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of interest from our
Sure, absolutely. Well, it probably starts with talking a little bit about our core technology.
Okay.
So our core technology is imaging microscopy. It's a fancy way of saying automated microscope.
Okay.
Right. So we took what has traditionally been a manual microscope and built a very highly automated system. And so when you think of microscope, you're typically thinking of looking at very, very small things, right? And so in the industry, we just say, we refer to that as subvisible, right? And so there's a lot of concern and interest around what's in the water at a microscopic level, things that you can't see, right? That could be a nuisance or could be toxic, right? And so that's the value that we provide to, let's say, municipal water facilities who are providing drinking water to residential and commercial facilities, or the lakes that you swim in, or the ocean for our fish, and so on and so forth, making sure that those ecosystems at the microscopic level are vibrant and diverse, but also free of contaminants or these other things that can be of detriment to society.
I think our 50 or so sustainability majors in the MBA are going to be happy to hear that answer. Let's flip to the students for a little bit. And you've got an incredible background, a great success story as an MBA. What advice might you offer to someone who's doing their MBA right now? And as you know, we've got a variety of students of differing ages, some our ages, some
Sure.
younger, some even older than us, different backgrounds. It's a wonderful degree that leads places, but what advice would you give to how to leverage their degree
Sure.
going forward?
Yeah, I think at the most basic level, the fundamentals are important, right? So, really understanding, finance and understanding how to read an income statement properly and a balance sheet, right? So I think that's an important basis. Understanding how to use the various tools of marketing and understanding that in market research. So the foundation is key. What's become increasingly more important, though, from my perspective and the MBAs that we hire, is around leadership and leadership qualities, right? And not only acting as a leader, but how do you engage your teams and groups that you lead, right? So that's very important. Analytics and data science has become a huge part, and that really wasn't part of my MBA 20 plus years ago, but it's become so important today because there's so much data available, given that we're on such a digital platform, especially with our business, right? And so how do you pull all of this information together that resides in all of these different places and turn it into something that's very useful? And then the other piece that's become important, especially here recently, is resiliency as it relates to crisis management, right? And being able to pivot and adjust in such an uncertain world. So those things weren't as prevalent when I was doing my MBA. It was more the sort of the foundational piece, and that's important and matters. But these elements of leadership, of data science, data analytics, big data, and this idea of resiliency and being able to work through challenging situations is becoming increasingly important.
That's great. One thing you'll be happy to hear is the most popular concentration of the MBA, the main MBA, is analytics with almost 100 students.
I can imagine.
A lot of them are interested in that, and I think what you make a really neat point I'd like to get your comment on is the majority are working full time, and this has become the majority in the United States now. Unlike us, we quit our jobs and did our MBAs and accumulated some debt. They're working and doing it online in hybrid environments. So how would you think you could, if you've got your regular job, you're doing your MBA at night, and I'm lasering in on that leadership piece you talked about, which is really challenging to do in a kind of a classroom environment, or if you're in a very specific task-oriented job, which a lot are. What kind of things would you advise that they might be able to do to build some of those leadership qualities that you talk so well about? Is there anything you'd suggest?
Yeah, it's tough because some of it is through self-learning, as you mentioned. A lot of it isn't textbook. I guess for me, I've done it through learning from others, right? So finding a good mentor or set of mentors, right, who really exhibit and really live that sort of that leadership life, right? And so I guess that would be my advice, is to try to find those individuals who really, not only, I think, to me, being a good leader is a lot of what I focus on here is around employee engagement, right? How can I bring the team up? So it's not about this idea, maybe old school idea of you have the leader and everybody else, right? But how can I bring everyone together in a way that we have highly engaged, highly motivated, right, individuals to better our business, and especially a business like ours, but I'm sure most too for the students. We've got some really talented and smart people, right? So the more I can engage them, and the more that I can get out of them and have them lead, just the better the business we're going to be.
Before we let you go, this has been great. Maybe you could give some last words of advice, something from your background, from fluid imaging, your experiences for our audience tonight.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Norm. And I think what I'll do is I'll go back to how we started the conversation and talk a little bit about my background and the diversity of my background and how valuable I think that is, and the diversity of the experiences that I've had, right? So I started my career as an engineer, right, and master's degree in material science and MBA, and worked in a very technical environment for quite some time, and then had the opportunity to go live overseas, and I took advantage of that. And gained a wonderful experience in doing that and being in that environment, and then transitioned more into business and commercial facing roles. So I guess my advice would be, just based on my experience and my career development, all of that has made me a better CEO, I think a better business leader, and a better person within a business environment. And so I guess what I'm saying is, for your students who are listening tonight, it would be, take advantage of all the opportunities to build a very diverse and broad resume and set of experiences. It has served me very well. I feel like I can communicate effectively across the organization. I feel like I can communicate effectively with our offices and business partners all over the world. And so I've never shied away from taking advantage of those opportunities, and I think that broad background and set of experiences has served me very well.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you. Right.